For coming. I know it's Friday afternoon, so we'll try to keep it fairly brief and informal because there's not a large group. The form is optional. I just want to stress, don't feel compelled to fill it out. I'm not going to talk about some of the components that are on there. What I want to do is just give sort of an overview of who we are, what we do, and then, because the gearing of the presentation is towards social enterprise stuff, just bounce a couple ideas off you guys, because we are very much a work in progress, and we are a social enterprise. Yeah, and if you've got questions at any time, just feel free to interject and ask us about different things. What we do is we use cell phones in difficult areas, environments that are conflict or post-conflict, to empower the poor by giving them access to information about jobs and aid. The Middle East is an area where we started, and it's an area where we're working now, but we are expanding quickly, and we're launching in South America and in a couple of other places in Southern Africa as well, that are situations that are either countries in transition or areas where there's ongoing conflict, where cell phones can play a role in mitigating some of the effects of those things. The examples that I'm going to be showing you today are drawn from the Middle East, specifically from Israel-Palestine region. This is a complex region. There's a complex conflict going on. Often people say there are two main sides to the conflict. There are many sides and many perspectives to the conflict. If you read the news, you'll know this. My job today is not to delve into sort of the hows and the whys of the conflict and how it got to where it is. This is not a poli-sci presentation. What I'm sort of, my starting point is, given that this stuff is happening, regardless of the motivations, regardless of who did what, to whom, when, and why, and how, looking ahead and looking forward, how can mobile technology play a role in solving it? If you want to hear more about sort of my opinions about, or my experience living in Ramallah, which is where I do in the West Bank, my opinions about the conflict, my thoughts, questions about the types of information I presented, please come after the presentation, and then we can talk in depth one-on-one. And I'd love to share sort of some of the views and the types of challenges we've been going through. Conflict zones are a tricky environment to get things done in. This is just a typical street scene. This is not in Israel-Palestine. This is actually in Lebanon. When infrastructure is damaged or non-existent, when electricity is not available, when internet access is low, when water and sanitation access is low, it's really difficult to get crucial information about different things to people. Whether you're in sub-Saharan Africa, if you're in the DRC, whether you're in Haiti, where there's flooding and power lines are washed out, wherever you are, if you see a situation like this, my first instinct is like, oh crap, okay, this is a mess. What do you do? This is Afghanistan, where an electrical base station has been damaged by fighting. That cuts off the ability for people to connect and do all sorts of things because of infrastructure damage. So in conflict zones, I mean, wherever you are, you've got lots of problems that are occurring. You've got people that are caught in the middle on whatever side of the conflict. Innocent civilians that need assistance with basic humanitarian aid, whether they're in Bosnia, whether they're in Sudan, wherever they are in the world. I think we all sort of know what conflict zones are and what they involve. Before I came to Kennedy School, was working for a USAID funded project, a U.S. Agency for International Development project. This part of the U.S. government's work in the Middle East, trying to move the peace process forward. I went over there with a U.S. government contractor called the Education Development Center, which is based in Newton here, to do an assessment of what Palestinian youth in particular, what kinds of resources and tools Palestinian youth needed to create viable economic prospects in Palestinian society. We didn't look at Israeli society, we only looked at Palestinian society. That was the kind of scope of what the US government wanted to do there. These types of things, I mean, all of these things you'll find, in the Middle East region, as in any conflict zone. When I went over there, I saw all of these things: damaged physical infrastructure, roads not working, electrical power lines down, poor communication networks. So not different agencies, the UN, medical agencies, the governments, the Israeli government, Palestinian government, both, trying to experiencing a lot of difficulties in communicating with each other. Fragmented planning after an event would happen. Who got what information? If there was medical care that was needed, whether it was a suicide bombing in Jerusalem or whether it was an attack in Nablus, difficulty in getting the right information quickly to allow a quick response to happen. I was there doing this assessment. I was working with my USAID friends, and the whole time I was there, I was just it just kind of got in my head that if there was a good way to just use some basic technology. Israeli society is extremely high-tech. It's a world leader in terms of the high-tech sector, both hardware and software. Palestinian society, not so, for a variety of reasons. Access to internet in the West Bank and in Gaza is low. It's less than a third of the population, but almost everyone has a cell phone. So I kind of sat there and was like, well, there's got to be a way we can use cell phone technology to affect this region. This is the region that we're talking about, in case the Middle East is not your region. Below Turkey and above Egypt, it kind of gets a little bit small and busy in there. That's kind of, I think, the crux of what's going on. The West Bank is kind of like a green blob in which Jerusalem is situated for whatever reason on the map, I guess because it's kind of in a little pocket there in the middle. The Gaza Strip is not shown here. Those are the areas that we work in. We don't work in Israeli areas because, again, the nature of our technological solution is designed for low-tech environments. An overview on, again, people living in the West Bank and Gaza typically refer to the area as Palestine. That's the term I'm going to use today. There's lots of other names for it. West Bank and Gaza, Judea and Samaria, Israel, historical Palestine, Ottoman Empire, Byzantine Empire, you name it, okay? The semantic term, I understand, is controversial in and of itself. I'm just taking a word and using it. We can call this conflict zone country because a lot of these things are applicable in other places too. It's about the size of Delaware. There's about 4 million people. It's kind of like the population of Boston. Gaza is the most densely populated place in the world, apparently. It has a lot of people per square kilometer. Poverty in a relative sense, but in absolute sense, the monthly income is actually pretty high. $400 a month for a developing country, as the West Bank and Gaza are always referred to, is quite high. Most people don't have wastewater treatment. That's just an indication of the fact that there is poverty, and it's pretty pervasive. The official unemployment rate, according to the Palestinian Authority, is about 40%. So that's high. Now, whether that's true, we'll get into. There's formal and informal employment that still happens. Education is a priority. Historically speaking, and this was maintained when the Israeli civil administration was in control of the area as well, a strong priority on building an effective school system, give people education. 80% of high school eligible people are enrolled in high school. For a developing country, again, huge. Put a face to the name. This is Ramallah, Main Street. I just mentioned in my other presentation, the bottom left-hand corner, very famous ice cream store. High levels of ice cream consumption occurring. On the right-hand side, actually, the green and white thing is that is the cell phone boutique. So that's a retailer for the National Cell Phone Company. These are all over the place. There'll be 5 on that strip, which is actually right here where I live. There's at least as far as your eye can see there. Let's say on that side of the street, there's 5 places that sell cell phones. That's 50% of all stores. This is in the South Hebron Hills, southern part of the West Bank. Total interesting variety of the way people are living, and it's the same throughout the entire region. These are families that live in caves. They live in, I don't know how to describe it, stone and rock caves in the South Hebron Hills. They're quasi-nomadic. This is Gaza. A lot of what we see in the headlines, involves missiles, militants, etc., etc. There is actually a fishing industry there. And it's small, but it goes on. And this is one of the guys that works for a partner organization there. This is Bethlehem. This is birthplace of Jesus, home of the Church of the Nativity. Another Palestinian city, home to university. This is a farmer in the northern West Bank. High gender equality, actually, in Palestinian society. That's changing. But still at this point in time, men and women are being considered equally for a lot of jobs. Again, photos of Palestine, of the West Bank and Gaza, that's the area where we work. Not to say there are other beautiful Israeli locations as well. Jerusalem, of course, being one of them. We'll have a little peek at it later. Okay, some of the challenges that are inherent to a conflict zone. And again, without going into the motivations, the why these things are there, that's not what our work addresses, and that's a lengthy discussion, and I don't feel that I'm the one to present that type of argument. There are, factually speaking, 500 plus military checkpoints throughout the West Bank. These, again, regardless of why they're there, they slow down movement of people from point A to point B. That has an impact on your ability to go out and look for work, or to get humanitarian aid in a time that you need it. Whether it's ambulances, whether it is trucks loading and unloading goods from one truck bed to the other, all of these things get held up by checkpoints. I mean, to be fair, it's an unfortunate circumstance, but ambulances have been used to carry suicide bombers, and trucks have been used to carry explosive devices. These are some of the without getting into it too much, why the circumstances are as they are. But given that they are as they are, again, the territory has become quite fragmented by these checkpoints, and there's a real impact on the economy and the labor force and what's going on. Here's a map of the West Bank. The green areas show the areas, in Gaza and Israel as well. The green areas are the ones that are under control of the Palestinian Authority. Again, I don't want to get into a long political discussion, but as you may know, there's now kind of like two Palestinian authorities. Gaza is under the control of a different government. The point being here is that Palestinians only have direct control, civil legislative control over the green areas that you see on the map. The rest of the areas are Israeli controlled, whether it's Israeli civil authority, civil administration control, or military control. The pink veins are roads. Those roads are all controlled, again, by Israeli military. Without going into the motivation for why that's the case, that is the case. And the reason why I bring this up is because it gives you, first of all, an idea of how small the area is, but also how difficult it is often to travel from Ramallah up where I live up to Nablus. This is a 60-kilometer, 40-mile journey. There's a minimum of 4 regular checkpoints there. I'm a foreigner. I am I don't know what you want to call it, not one of the parties of the conflict that's living there. I can pass freely through any military checkpoint, generally speaking. If there's been a security incident, if there's been an attack in Jerusalem, Israeli military will tighten up security on the checkpoints. They're looking for people behind the attack. That journey could take up to 8 hours. It could take more. The checkpoints could be closed entirely. All this to say that it's extremely an unpredictable environment, and if you need to get an ambulance through, and if you need to deliver first aid, it's difficult. And again, the situation is complex, and obviously, nobody wants to create these conditions where the humanitarian response is delayed. That is a reality, however, and so our job is to try to use technology to deal with it. This is what a checkpoint looks like, just so you kind of put a face to that name. There's a guard tower on top. IDs are checked for vehicles usually through the driver's side window. Sometimes people need to get out and cross through separately. Again, this is another example. UN and humanitarian aid workers, it really varies. I can't generalize. Sometimes the checkpoints are a mere formality. Things are cordial. You go through and you're done. Sometimes it's very tense. Sometimes someone has a pipe bomb at a checkpoint and it causes an explosion and the checkpoint gets closed. It's a varying range of things. Sometimes Israeli soldiers who run the checkpoint and Palestinians get along very well with each other. Sometimes they don't. You can't generalize. It's a very dynamic situation. What I'm trying to illustrate here by showing the photos is simply that from a purely logistical standpoint, without getting into why the checkpoints are there, given that they are there, traffic delays are extremely common. If you are exporting a good and you need a component part to come in, long delays. If you're exporting an agriculturally sensitive product that needs to get out before it rots, long delays. What we're trying to do is, this is kind of a wacky and wild but true photo. So if you're riding on a horseback, just to be safe, I guess it's a horse line or whatever it is. Our point was, look, we looked at these situations and we saw you've got physical mobility restrictions. You've got people that are living in different pockets of territory that are not able to get around very effectively. Low technology in terms of web access, but almost 80% of houses have cell phones. And so what if you could give people information about things that they need to know, how to get medical aid, how to get basic food supplies, without having them leave their houses, without without putting them in danger and without putting others in danger, and trying to mitigate the situation. Just some stats about cell phones overall. You can see generally most developing countries, conflict zones included, more widely used than the web, and the fastest growing communications tool in the developing world. Typically when landlines are down, when standard electrical supplies don't work, you still got cell phone towers, and in the West Bank and Gaza in particular, that's the case. You can see these are rates of technology use among, again, just West Bank and Gaza. If you did a graph for Israel, it would probably look a lot different. I think internet would probably be like tied with cell phones, maybe, and landline phones. I don't know. But this is sort of typical of most developing economies. Cell phone also being the cheapest way to communicate with other people. We focus on one aspect of cell phones, which is called SMS. It's text messaging. Everybody knows what text messaging is? Okay. Very popular because it's a cheap way to convey a simple unit of meaning, message, information. You don't need an iPhone. You don't need a BlackBerry Storm or whatever it's going to be called, Bold or whatever. You can have a crappy, really old 1998 cell phone that looks like a brick, and it will work with text messaging. We chose the most low-tech solution. We also, though, have everything available on the web. If you do have web access, you can access things that way. But we went for SMS. People have their cell phones. They often have two cell phones. They've got an Israeli network one, a Palestinian network one, because of network coverage overlap. Or non-overlap. It's just cheap, it's accessible, it's already in use, and it doesn't require importing new hardware. We're not trying to set up terminals, set up places where people can go look for jobs. This is just direct-to-user info. I don't claim we're the silver bullet. We're trying. We're doing okay. We could probably do better. We do two things. One service is called Job Match. It's a service that matches, again, exclusively Palestinians within the West Bank and Gaza who are looking for work with employers who have jobs to offer. And I'll explain this step by step in a second. Second service we run for 8 agencies, which include the UN, the Red Crescent, which is right across over there, and the Education Development Center, DAI, a bunch of US government contractors that are working in the West Bank. This helps 8 agencies get news out to the people that they serve, so whether it's local Palestinian communities or whether it is staff at their own agency, we help them get that news out. Our main goal is to help people save time, save money, and reach more people. That sounds like a trite kind of corporate thing, but if you have to spend 8 hours doing a 40-mile journey to look for a job, and you may not get that job, versus getting that information on your phone and arranging an interview, and you've just saved yourself, personal risk from going through all these checkpoints, money as well, and you could maybe stay at home and help out at home and do household things that are important too. Saving money because it costs about $20 one way to go from the northern West Bank to the middle. That's expensive for people. Gas is expensive, so public transit is expensive, and reaching out to more people. Who we are Reynolds alums, that's me, MIT Sloan / Harvard mid-career folks, but we are the non-Palestinians. The rest of the team is Palestinian. They are from the Arab American University of Jenin. This is a US started university in the northern West Bank. They're software folks, they're business folks as well. So we're a team of about 6 people, and we have advisors too. Are there any questions before I go into like the technology itself, step by step? Yeah.
I guess you might know this, but how do you get the information about all the different jobs, and how do you compile that? Like, how does that work?
Coming up now. Any other questions? No. Yes.
Are you making money from both the aid side and the job side?
Yeah. Everybody pays. We are a social enterprise. We operate as a nonprofit in the West Bank, and that's like the key question for you all, whether that's a good idea or not. But everybody pays. We are still revenue generating though as a nonprofit. Our belief is that we do not want to be reliant on external grant funding, because that's only as good as the grant that you can get. Once that runs out, what do you do? So everybody pays to use job seeker who looks at the service. Let me go through the technology, and then it'll probably become clearer. Okay, so what did I not do? Okay. What did I do? Okay. you're a young person, you're Palestinian, you have a cell phone, which is most people. You're looking for a job. Send a text message that says register. You send it to a special number, 37191, happens to me, okay? Once you do that, you get a message back that says, hey, welcome, you're registered. Could you answer a few questions for us? You go through a series of questions. The first question comes into your phone that says, how old are you? You answer that question, you enter a number or you make a numerical choice. This one says, where do you live? 1 for Nablus, 2 for Jenin, 3 for Bethlehem. So you text back the answer, and then the next question comes to you. Okay, when can you work? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, text 1 for Monday. Okay, that goes back in. What happens is this is going into our database. The database is creating a concise little profile about you, which we call a mini CV. It's not a full CV, it's a mini CV. It has very basic information about you. You still have to go and meet with people, but this is a little profile that gets added to now of 5,000 that we have, that then employers, from their side, can browse, okay? The main problem that exists right now is the fact that there's no good way for people to get information about jobs and emergency aid, okay? As I mentioned, internet access is low. Newspaper classified ads are pitching to like senior execs to entry level. There are no government job centers. The colleges don't have job centers. If you want a job, there is no way for you to find it right now. And aid as well, I'll explain to you, there's also no good way for you to figure out if you need emergency help, like what services you can draw on. So employers looking for staff, hard for them to find where staff are. They don't know where to recruit. There's no monster.ps, and it's useless because people don't use the web. If you're a job seeker, again, you don't know where to go to look for a job. Now, we've got 5,000 people with these mini CVs up there. It's not perfect, but it's a bit of information about you. And employers can then go search those guys. And at the same time, from the other side, employers can create something that looks pretty much the same, with kind of the photo negative, which says like, I need a young man who's a farmer, who's in Jenin, who has high school ed, and we call that a mini job ad. Same data, same field data, just from the other side, from the supply side. That goes into the database as well. And so what happens is, if you're a job seeker, you created your CV, your info's up there, okay? And then once you're done with that, you can log into the service at any time from your phone, and you can text a couple things. You can text search, and then you'll get a message back that says, okay, well, what do you want to search by? You want to search by location, you want to search jobs by sector, you want to search jobs by hours per week, by wage, and then you can get to a little job ad through that process. Or the other thing you can do is if you're just bored or you just want to do it quickly, you just text match me. A match me pulls up all the job ads that meet your exact criteria that you entered in your mini CV. So if you said, I'm in Cambridge, MPID, looking for part-time work in the evenings, and then you text match me, you're going to get all the jobs that need an MPID in Cambridge, part-time work evenings, 5 at a time. We don't want to give you like a million. In the order of which is newest, basically. Yes?
How much does the user have to pay for this service? Is it every time you get matched, you get a fee? Is it a monthly fee?
You pay per message. Right now with the exchange rate, it's about 6 cents per message, which is about 2 cents more than a regular message. So it's pretty reasonable, and we sell it that way. I mean, that is the way that it works well. Other questions about that component? Does that make sense, the way it works?
So do you negotiate with someone?
Yeah, absolutely. They run it on their network, but we run it on the Israeli networks as well, which you can, there's various ways. Like we have more official cooperation with the Palestinian network when we work with the Israeli networks. Let me just skip briefly to the second service, which is the one for the nonprofits. This we are not alone in doing. Lots of people are doing this. But we just kind of started it as a sideline because organizations, aid agencies were coming to us saying, either we're a small Palestinian healthcare organization or we are the Red Cross. And given that there's 500 checkpoints, we can't send people out physically to figure things out, to get data, or to collect information. So if there was a way that we could create a mailing list that had all the numbers of our staff on it, and if something happens, we've got them all grouped according to all staff, or according to region, or according to any criteria you want. And when something happens, I could be sitting, for instance, at the checkpoint you saw earlier, and I suddenly see the checkpoint blows up, okay? I'm a Red Cross manager. I'm an EMS manager. I can, from my phone, select the group ambulance drivers, quickly send an SMS to all ambulance drivers. Ambulance drivers have a radio system there, but Red Crescent came to us because they said the radio system doesn't work very well and it's expensive. And when we get new ambulances, we want to have like another option. And we have paramedics that are often in the area, but they're not in ambulances for whatever reason. They drive other cars that are not ambulances because it's cheaper. So if you see the checkpoint blow up, or if you see anything happen, you can then text immediately ambulance drivers, everybody get to the scene. Immediately that's going out to the cell phones, which everybody carries on them. No email, no landline. You can send it out to your gray group of people, which is just ambulance drivers, to your black group of people, which is all other medics that might be in the region. You can send it out to everybody to just say, everybody, go to this place, basically. We use this we don't use it. I mean, we provide the platform to people, and they use it for a variety of humanitarian responses. And this is relevant to any conflict zone. It is this similar type of thing. Like I say, this is not original to us. The job thing is more unique to us, but this is being used in a number of different areas, Southern Africa, Asia as well. When there's a tsunami, when there's this flooding in Haiti, any of this stuff, as long as the cell phone towers work, which they generally often do, you can send out quick, rapid news to your staff in the field. Now, the other thing we do is you get a survey, you get information back from those people as well. Sometimes you want to just tell people, do stuff, but other times you want to get a report. An abstract example, well, not an abstract example, a different example. There's flooding in Haiti, and you are the World Food Program, and you need to know how the warehouses are doing in each of your different districts, and there's no roads, right? So you create a survey, it's web or phone based, and you designate who it's going to go out to among your staff, or you could do it among your average beneficiary too. And you say, this one's kind of benign, it's like when can you attend training, but you could say, how many kilos of rice are left in your warehouse? Because we can't get to you to know that, but we could helicopter something into you if you need it. We send that out to people in an alert that just says, hey, it's medical aid, for instance. Okay, help us plan the next training time. Help us reach you in a helicopter tomorrow. Let us know what to bring, okay? So you send out a message, and then anyone from their cell phone who's registered and signed up in your group can send a message back in. So here you go. These guys are answering a numerical answer. How many kilos of rice are left in your warehouse so we know what to airdrop in tomorrow? You could just text in 60, and it's as simple as that. You can do more complex things. You could do 20 questions if you wanted to. A lot of organizations use our service for healthcare data collection over time. Everything comes back into a central computer database. You can't view all the incoming results on your phone. Mobile's not the way to do that because it's still too kind of limited visually. But if you send out a question to 1,000 people, 1,000 people can bring their responses in. It all goes into one database. You can export that to SPSS, to SAS, to Excel, and you can get a quick idea, okay, we've got to drop 120 kilos of food there, we've got to drop 150 kilos of food there. You just did that in 20 minutes or less, if everybody gets back to you immediately. Red Crescent, to get back to the West Bank, Red Crescent uses the service to coordinate blood donation when they need to. If there's an incident that happens, they will, sorry, back to being here. If there's an incident that happens, they will send out a message, and they've got groups divided up by blood type. So you got 500 type O donors, 500 type A donors, whatever the case is, and they'll send a message to say, we need blood donations now for type O. This is a huge help for these guys in a time of humanitarian crisis. Blood donations are low always in this region. I kind of talked about those guys. Ta'awun is a local organization. Just to give you a couple of examples of how it's being used in our geography. These are Bedouin. They're quasi-nomadic, formerly nomadic, sometimes nomadic people. They were traditionally nomadic. Now they live in kind of informal settlements, I guess is one way you call them, very basic environments. There was a snowstorm. We had a big snowstorm last January, which for the Jerusalem and West Bank area is totally rare. People don't have shovels. I'm from Canada. I thought it was funny at first, but then I realized it was kind of dangerous. People were trying to squeegee the snow off their lawns. People were videoing the snow, just kind of taking their camcorder and walking like this. There hadn't been snow in that environment. Okay, that's great, but then the Bedouin are completely unequipped to live in these conditions. And we were getting reports right away within a week of the first snow. There were 2 snowfalls. Week of the first snow, bronchitis that had not been prevalent before was cropping up. Darwin is one of the local NGOs that uses our platform. They did a food and blanket campaign. What they did is they have these families signed up to their service. They have their phone numbers. These guys are living in corrugated tin shacks, basically, on a hillside, but they have mobile phones, and the coverage is good. So they just went to them and they said, okay, could you tell us, just simple, do you need blankets, yes or no? Do you need anti-bronchial medicine, yes or no? And do you need food, yes or no? 3 questions. Through that, they were able to help 1,691 families get the things that they needed, but it saved them time, and they were able to respond much faster. If kids were sick, the bronchitis did not develop to an acute stage. If people needed blankets to prevent the disease from spreading and to give their kids, better conditions, great, they got that. The rapid response time, plus this is a small organization. That's somebody calling. This is a small organization, and so they don't have a lot of resources. So the ability to get a picture of where they need to deliver aid before they have to do it is huge for them. Red Chris and I talked about that. Ramsey, he's just one of the driver dudes. Okay. Home demolitions, right? This is a really complex facet of the conflict. There's a lot of good online resources if you want to read sort of the different perspectives on why home demolitions happen. Factually speaking, the Israeli military will demolish Palestinian homes, again, for a variety of reasons. Now, the UN, OCHA, which is the Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, part of their mandate, along with Save the Children and a bunch of other local NGOs, not international NGOs, but Save the Children is one of their main other partners, Austcare, the Australian NGO. Part of their mandate is to prevent the demolitions from taking place. When a demolition is rumored to be happening or about to happen, the UN they have one group of 70 people. And if you know in your region where you are, in the West Bank or in Gaza or in East Jerusalem, the demolition is going to happen, you can text in to their main sort of coordinator hub. Okay, you can text in a message, and then the coordinator will inform everybody else and say, okay, there's a demolition. And what the UN tries to do is to physically go to the location where the demolition is about to take place and try to channel that, try to prevent it from happening, and try to channel that event back into the legal system, where it can be accurately determined whether the family whose house this is, are they legally in possession of a deed to the house, are they not, are they built illegally? It's a complex facet of the conflict. I don't know how, there's a lot of kind of to unpack there, but I don't have the knowledge breadth to talk about it in detail. But ask me if you want to get into sort of more why this is happening and what the UN is doing, and I can provide more details. Give you one example of a job match service just before we kind of wrap up. This is the Al Mari refugee camp. It's in Ramallah. Refugee camps in the West Bank and Gaza are not like refugee camps in Darfur. They've been there. The refugee issue, the refugee question, whatever you want to call it, in this region has been a long-standing one. It's been a 60-year issue. And so you have refugees who have been staying kind of in a stasis with refugee status for a long time. And it's very difficult for them to transcend their economic conditions. There's a lot of Palestinian social stigma that surrounds refugees. And refugees are often not accepted to live in other parts of the city. It's harder for them to get jobs. So this is a camp, and you can see it's like really dense. It's really basic. And for women living in that camp, life is tough because the close proximity of other people means that families are really protective. And they don't let women go out unaccompanied often. This is Dia Shanti. She's a student at Birzeit University, Palestinian University. She is one of 9 folks in her family. Parents valued education, despite the fact that it's expensive and it's tough for them. But when she finished school, she studied accounting, but she didn't immediately get a job. So her family basically said to her, look, if you don't find a job within a certain period of time, I think your sort of entry into the working world is kind of none. And we're going to find other options for you. It's either time to get married or you're going to stay at home and help with the other siblings. She didn't have resources. Her university had no career counseling, no job center, nothing. She doesn't have web access because she cannot go out to internet cafes unaccompanied. Internet cafes are mostly young men. She does have a cell phone. And I bring this story up not to say, look, we are doing amazing, because we're not. You'll see from our stats that we should be doing a lot better. But this is one case. She created her mini CV. She said she's an accountant living in Ramallah. She can do full-time work. She's a new grad. Put it up there on the database. And then she started browsing some of the job ads that employers have put up there. And she found this one at Bisan, which is like a leading accounting firm. I was saying they developed the like Palestinian QuickBooks. So they're, I don't know, I guess you need Palestinian QuickBooks apparently. But they're a leading accounting firm, and she, she hooked up. She found their information on the mini job ad. She gave them a call, and she had the interview with the person. She got hired, and the main reason why I know about this is because we have a helpline for technical stuff, but lots of people just call it to say lots of other things too, which is interesting. They'll be like, yeah, hi, I got a job on your service. I think it's really good. But could you add like this other field which you don't have right now? We listen to what people say. It's Palestine. People have to just talk. So they'll like call us and say, yeah, great. Okay, well, I went to a job interview and I got the job, but the salary isn't what I wanted. It's like, well, we can't help you with that. Our ability to help you is like, we get you to the interview. It's like, did you negotiate with the employer about the salary? No. Okay, well, I'm so sorry. This is a technical support line. But anyway, she called us and she was like, look, I just wanted to let you know that I got a job and here's the deal. And it was like a really touching story. So, I mean, we share it basically. Okay, the most important stuff, right? Are we actually doing something that's relevant? So here's the deal. We matched, since we started, like in 06, we've matched about 2,000 people. Now, those are not all full-time jobs, to be very clear. A lot of these things are internships. Some of them are not paid. We didn't initially do as well as we were going to do with sort of full-time employment, so we kind of broadened the type of matching we were doing to a training opportunity, a training course, an apprenticeship, whatever the case is. So this includes sort of all of that stuff. People stay at the places that they're matched with beyond 6 months, so we take that as a proxy for everybody's happy. Job seekers told us, it takes us 75% less time to look for a job. Then we asked them, how long were you looking for a job previously before you started using the service? How long is it taking you now? Again, we take that for maybe a proxy measure for reducing unemployment to a certain extent, but we cannot claim that we are single-handedly reducing unemployment. I mean, it's a little bit big. But we're doing okay. I think we need to do better, but we're doing something. AidLink is easier for us to manage. We've got about 25,000 people when you count those, so we have 15 aid agencies at any time that are using the service. About 120 alerts sent per week. I just forwarded Jarrett one last night from the UN, which was saying, here's a meeting, go here, do this. Red Crescent is just doing a major survey for all their blood donors right now, 2,000 people this week, asking them, what could we do to incentivize you to donate blood more, basically. So that's kind of a nice organizational development thing. Elections, totally usable for elections and polling. We did local club, community center elections for the YMCA through SMS polling. Easy, PIN protected, so generally fraud-free, anonymous, discreet. Okay, yeah, challenges. So these are kind of the main things. Yeah. Infrastructure damage. We're in a conflict zone. Doing this in any other conflict zone, you still do have cell phone towers that get affected. When I was in a meeting one day, that somebody rushed in and was like, okay, well, the Gaza cell phone tower, one of the main ones, just got hit with a missile. So their southern Gaza's got no cell phone service for the day. So it's not a perfect solution, obviously. You need some electricity to be able to charge your phone so that it works, for instance. The regulatory environment, the conflict zone typically does not have very functioning government institutions. Palestinian Authority is a really young entity. It's often ineffective, it's being corrupt, there's a lot of difficulties in getting something working in a conflict zone from a legal standpoint. Culture of suspicion, Palestinian Secret Service, Israeli Secret Service, both people shoulder tap ordinary Palestinians, ask them or coerce them to provide information. So on both of these sort of two main sides, there's a lot of suspicion if you were to come into somebody and say, could I get your phone number because we want to help you because you're Bedouin and you're living on the side of a hill. But we don't do this directly. The organizations that use our service do it. but it's that's tricky. CRM, client relationship management, we don't see a lot of the people that we work with. Gaza, we do everything by video conference. It's really hard to get there. So it's tough when you can't talk to the people you're doing business with face to face. The best you have is a video conference. And then this is a good segue into, I think, I'm going to wrap up and I want to open it up to discussion. I have a couple questions to just ask you guys, brainstorming ones. Okay, major thing. What is social enterprise? People ask us this all the time. We are registered and we operate in the West Bank as a nonprofit organization. We decided to do this because it was extremely difficult for us to register as a business. The legal requirements to do that were tough. We also decided that in this geography and market, where there's only a population of 4 million, for us to make like a 50-time return on investment or something like that, we don't have enough people using the service to make it happen. But when we go into a meeting, people are like, so what are you guys? I don't get it. You know, you're a company, you're not a company. This has been a huge, huge challenge for us. I'm kind of done with the presentation. But look, we're registered as a for-profit in the US. That's how we thought we were going to go first. This is a real challenge we're dealing with like right now. So we set up as a US C Corp, and we thought, great, we're going to do that. Then we went over there, and all the advantages. I mean, like, look, you get capital easier, you get more of it. You just go to one VC. The guy's like, great, if you can convince him and make a good sell, good pitch. Few strings attached. You've got, I don't know, 2 million, 50 million, 100 million, whatever. Grants. But on the minus side, I mean, people don't really like the private sector in a lot of these environments. They're like, what are you guys going to gouge us? Wait, we're running humanitarian aid services and you're a company? Come on, why you can't be profiting off our backs. Najaf University in Nablus. Nablus, extremely hard-hit area, home to a lot of militant factions, also completely encircled by checkpoints, such that if you, and cause effect, again, who knows, but such that if you, because they never have gone there. It's a tricky environment, so we went to a university there, and they were like, look, we are in this really dire situation here. How are you're going to profit off this? Come on, and basically kind of slammed the door the first time. We went back and we sorted it out. Taxation, it's something you got to factor in your business model. I mean, it's a 17.5% VAT on SMS messages. That's one of our main drivers. So we're going to get taxed like almost a fifth of our revenue right off the bat when we're a struggling startup. As a nonprofit, again, okay, everybody understands nonprofits. It's a country full of aid agencies. It's a conflict zone. Okay, so you guys are like those guys. I get it, right? You're a humanitarian. Bravo, good, great. We love you. Work with us. Tax breaks, no tax. VAT refunds, 17.5% back in my pocket. Every time I go to buy anything we need, transportation, whatever, I don't have to pay tax on it. That's great. Capital access is more complex. We got funding from the World Bank to do an 18-month project to provide the job service on university campuses. The amount of bureaucracy it took us, you have to factor in 6 months of bureaucracy. 6 months. Somebody's got to bring this paper here. We don't have a scanner in our office, and the other office is closed, so we'll get the document to you next week. The bank doesn't transfer money. The bank only transfers money on Friday. Real world scenario. Jacob goes and does the payroll for the month out of his own bank account because the World Bank doesn't release the funds. They release the funds on the 10th, the 20th, and the 30th of the month. But if any of those days fall on a Friday or a Muslim holiday, they don't release the money. So what do you do in a month where there's 10th, 20th, and 30th that all fall on holidays or Fridays? No money that month. These are the things we have to deal with. This is the World Bank. This is not like some local rinky-dink thing. Funding limitations as well. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, these are our future plans. But I'd just be interested. The two questions kind of I have for the group basically, because we're pretty much done. Is thoughts? I mean, should we go just kind of throw in the towel and say we're a nonprofit, but we're a revenue generating nonprofit, so we cover our costs? Or do we really go and say, look, we think, volume-wise, okay, if we've got enough people using this, we go to an investor and say, okay, you can make money off of this, so please invest in us. That's question number one. And then I guess kind of sort of related to that is question number two. So we're growing whether we like it or not. I mean, whether, there's high demand for our technologies, and I don't say that out of any ego, it's just a fact. Like, people are emailing me, like, when I go on Google Analytics, I'm like, who is checking our site from Sudan or Saudi or like these bizarre countries? I've never talked to anybody there. People are emailing us saying, okay, we want to do your thing. Okay, how do we do that? So, 2 questions, for-profit, non-profit, and how, given what you've seen, like, how do we grow? And yeah, I'll suggest that we take it and perhaps apply it immediately. So, I don't know, any thoughts?
Any questions in general?
Any questions in general?
How do you deal with multiple users per cell phone?
You different PIN and usernames. So you don't have to, your username is not your cell phone number. So yeah, because we do deal with that a lot.
I guess, how do you, since the infrastructure is there in the region, how do you do marketing for the service? How do you get the word out about what you're doing?
We don't do public marketing, which is maybe, I don't know, maybe that's not going to work in a different geography, but for the job match service, we do it exclusively through institutional agreements for the demand side, for the job seekers, with youth associations, community centers, which are kind of like the hub of youth activity, and then colleges and universities. So we we sign a contract with the university, we become the provider of job information for them, and then we go do solicitation on campus. But it's packaged as a value-added service for the university, if that makes sense. We do not put ads in the paper because what's really important for us is to keep the supply and demand for the job thing like balanced. So we put one ad in the paper, we're gonna have 1 million people applying for jobs, which will earn us some money in the first week, but then they'll say this service sucks, this is, only a certain amount of jobs. So we kind of do these like timed release of the service to different people. On the employers, we're just always building. That's what we do. Is there another question? No.
Who provided the seed funding for that?
It's a good question. Bootstrap, mainly. HBS, SE, Business Planning Contest, prize money, and Angel Donor, grant maker. He's not an investor. So. And that was it. And then the World Bank, again, when the World Bank stuff kicked in, that's sort of different. But those resources.
I understand this might have local potential implications, but what would you provide a service we have
Well, we provide that for the Ministry of Youth. We do right now. Ministry of Labor. Yeah, no, it's a good point. I mean, labor. I don't know, why did we not go on that route? I think the way we approach the employers is typically being through these like sector associations. It's like all the pharmaceutical companies belong to this. It's not a union, it's the inverse. It's like for the companies, they belong to these umbrella associations. Those guys are much more effective than the government in terms of communicating with the businesses. And I think that's been sort of why strategically we've kind of gone that way. Ministry of Labor generally is like a policymaker or they're a regulator, but it's an interesting point though. I mean, we probably should investigate that a little bit.
Because you mentioned that the PA is not necessarily a law as far as linking.
Correct.
Private sector.
Yeah.
With you.
Yeah, it's true. Although then you also get into ego and ownership, branding. I don't care so much about the branding, but with the Ministry of Youth, for instance, they're like, well, we want this is going to be the Ministry of Youth thing, right? And we said, well, you're a client, like you can use it, you can present it as your thing, but it's the Souktels service. So.
It's also getting into instability.
That's right. Who is the Ministry of Labor?
Gone tomorrow,
yeah.
Or who's controlling it. It depends what area they're controlling it in.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever split off the two parts of the business and make the job seekers, the for-profit half, and the state piece, the nonprofits, that get people to trust you more on the aid side? I mean, are those same people using both services?
Sometimes there's overlap. Like we got an organization that does some hiring and also does aid provision. But actually, if you were going to do it, I'd almost do it the other way around because the aid link service is more lucrative, actually, because there's a higher volume of messages you're getting sent on a more regular basis.
It's not just aid either. Look
That's
at
right.
it
Yeah.
like,
Well,
there's something going on at the school that day. Who knows what? There's some live fire. You don't know what it is. They need to send a message out to 2,000 people, taking the day off today. It's a holiday. They're willing to pay for that.
Yeah.
And that's a lot more messages.
But there's also quasi-market. I mean, we thought like, one of the debates we're having right now is, well, should we just go, because we do have that sphere. The other thing is that technology is pretty pervasive, the bulk messaging. So
yet nobody else is doing it there.
no, there's a couple of other ways.
Really
Small guys. But so do we go like corporate with that? You know, go to companies, be like, hey, and make that a for-profit driver, right? The job service is fine. We're kind of breaking even on it, but the aid-link one, because we charge a setup fee too, because everybody wants a customized software platform. And we have to get some kind of chunk up front, so that's what we do. But yeah, split the services. Yeah, we've talked about that.
And you have a lot bigger customer base, sounds like, for the aid.
Yeah.
So and that's really the value.
Yeah.
What else do we use that huge customer base for?
To do,
For
yeah. But we're kind of getting into more. We have a nonprofit theater, the Palestinian National Theater in Jerusalem. They're a nonprofit, but they're like a cultural organization, and they now send promo texts to their subscribers on our thing. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot more I think that we could build into that. Yeah.
I'm just going to build off that and ask, we talked about cultural suspicion.
Yeah.
How prohibitive has that actually been in business development? And have you done any analysis to see if you were to go nonprofit, if the tax subsidies, if you would actually create more profitability, or what level is generating income as a nonprofit, no longer kosher enough?
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is the first bit, the cultural suspicion. Yeah. The way we've kind of gotten over that hump, which is good, because now we have enough big brand clients using the service that we just kind of like, I don't know, name drop to put it, I guess one way, that we go into a new prospective client and say Red Crescent, which is because the government Ministry of Health does not provide a lot of healthcare services because they're really weak. It's all it's private and nonprofits that do most of it. So we just go in and we say Red Crescent, UN, YMCA, Job Match, that's A-Link, Job Match, Deloitte, Ernst & Young, Yellow Pages, PSAN Financial, and everyone's like, fine. Name is a big thing there. So, and then, sorry, what the second thing you were saying was, calculating what the differential is in terms of what the foregone tax revenue. Yeah, I mean, we haven't really crunched. We kind of just made the decision to go nonprofit because the red tape was huge. The requirements for being a Palestinian business versus for the nonprofit, we registered in Canada, which is where I'm from. It's easier to do that, and then we operate as a foreign NGO doing business in Palestine, which is so much easier than trying to set up a Palestinian company. So I'm on these like SE listservs, and everyone is having these same problems. Like even within the U.S., there's this new form L3C or something, which is like an LLC. You could register as a kind of for-profit or nonprofit. It's still emerging. But those are two good points. I mean, hey Jared, I want to make sure you take notes. Yeah.
As far as two questions. First is I'm trying to understand the cost. Who pays for the text message? Does the institution pay for all 8 cents, or does the receiver pay for 6 cents and the institution pays for 8 cents?
No, outside of North America, incoming texts are free. So the user, if you're a recipient of an alert, you never pay for it. So the sender always pays for it, basically. For the job match service, anyone who's sending a message into the service, like a query or a sign-up chain of messages, is going to pay for that, and that's a premium SMS, which is more expensive than a regular text message, but it's still pretty competitive price-wise. So that's one revenue driver. We charge the employers tiered fixed fees for the postings that they put on. That's another revenue driver. For the aid link, again, it's message volume, and then on the other side, it is the setup fee for the kind of like software license.
Same question, are you guys in the black or in the red?
We're gently in the black. Gently.
I just take a look at it.
Well, let me put it this way. I mean, in our current area of operation, we're in the blacks officially that we can say, hey, we did the hockey stick and we're doing okay. But again, if you were an investor and you wanted to look at this and be like, oh, will this be madly profitable in Palestine? No, it's not going to be. What we do is take that model and show it to somebody and say, look, we're working in the hardest place to work, and this is how we're doing. So imagine like the not hardest place to work. That's kind of where we're at. Yeah.
Here's something along those lines. If you're scaling up, what are some of your concerns or challenges when you see you have people contacting you from all these random places? And what's your concern?
Should we be quite clear about it? I mean, the concern is, okay, it's a kind of a labor-intensive operation that we run. That's kind of the main concern. So right now,
With a setup deployment.
Setup deployment, exactly. So we have 6 full-time staff that are running this thing over there.
They're all Palestinian.
They're all Palestinian. So if you wanted them to do a job, and like 2 of them, their entire job is going to the private sector and like rustling up new employers, basically. It's like sales and marketing. 2 of them are full-time IT folks, which is product development, and 2 are kind of like jack of all trades. They do everything. They have IT backgrounds, but they're good salespeople, and they do all the niggly crap, buying and stuff. So somebody came to me from Malawi like last week, 2 weeks ago, and was like, great, I want to do it in Malawi. So what is that going to involve? I mean, what we're thinking is basically, okay, you could franchise, you could license our software, and it's DIY. You do the whole HR part of it, right? You pay us a licensing fee, great. Or another option is you're a franchisee, we come in, it's like Baskin Robbins, we'll come in, we'll do the training, it's our brand, etc. Third option is a joint venture. I mean, if you wanted to be more involved. So those are options.
Another option is just to make this whole thing open source.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
create a service organization around it. Because if we made it open source, all these people would start developing. I don't care if they take it and use it in some other place, whatever. We talk about it. And granted, there's logistics issues with that too, but there's a couple of other open source things in the SMS world that are really taking off. And it's something called Frontline.
Well, basically, I was just at this Mobile for Good conference in Johannesburg, and MIT, Columbia, and this really interesting a nonprofit called Instead, which is based in the Bay Area, plus a bunch of South African guys are all coming together to say, for the bulk messaging thing, for the disaster relief alerts, let's do an open source platform, because as many people should be able to get this as possible. I mean, I don't disagree with that, but my question is then about the execution of the service. Okay, there's a cost involved to it, so how do you got to reconcile that? So, yeah, any thoughts?
I mean, I'll direct you.
Yeah, or by email if you want.
Yeah.
Sure.
You mentioned the text, the SMS were not, pretty competitive. So I'm assuming the songs were you just for the users,
Price-wise? Yeah.
Price-wise?
Yeah.
It's not.
No.
Okay. Because I was going to ask you, would it be an interesting idea to not so much charge up front during the search, but maybe as a percentage or the fee of your future salary?
Yeah, well, so here's the thing. They have like a couple of web-based and a couple of just general HR firms. That's what they do. And one of our good USPs is that we don't do that because they get huge backlash. They take 50% of the first month's salary for the job seeker, and nobody's happy with it. And when we do our market research, we met with one of our big, potentially competitors called Forso, which just means opportunity. And they were like, yeah, our model is we take 50% of your first month's salary. And then we talked to some people that had been using their service. And it's a good way for us to actually draw market share towards us by saying we don't do that. However, on the other hand, if your monthly salary on average is about $500, okay, so that's $250 a pop, gross for people that use that service. So that's a lot. We have to put it this way: we need a lot more messages to get $250. Other thoughts? Yeah.
On the messaging side, or for the job match thing at least, it seems like you could get a lot more eyeballs on there if I don't know what's prohibiting people. Maybe it's the cost of registration or something. Like if it was in the U.S., I'm just thinking of things like Monster or Vault.com, or they afford to charge a lot more from the posting side, but then to get a lot more eyeballs, and even eBay, customers don't really pay, it's the sellers that pay. So have you thought about doing that so you can get, it seems like the base is at least, if unemployment rate is 40%, 4 million, that's over 1 million people unemployed. If you get even half of those, it's huge jump over the current.
So you're talking about the employer, the supply side price point.
Yeah, but then opening it up and making it free for anyone just to go in and search based on their mini CV.
I mean, for the employers, it's tricky because it still is a developing country. So even if you're a private sector company doing business, your margins are still so small. So we sort of looked at that. That's why we did a scale as well for the postings. So we said, look, if you're a big company, you're going to pay us $400 a month to do this. If you're a small company, you're going to pay $10. So we tried to kind of cater to all the different tiers. for some of the bigger guys where it's more reliable, we could do that. Yeah, we could. Opening it to the general public, it's tricky to say where that would go. We've been kind of cautious about it because we don't want the demand to really outstrip the supply.
We've seen a lot of examples of companies that when they don't scale a service properly, there's just a massive disparity of job seekers to postings, and the service fails.
Or let me put it to you this way: the other issue is the employers really like the service because they have a perception that they're kind of getting this, not an elite pool, they're getting a specific pool of people. Like we pitch it actually by saying, we have, and I didn't really talk about this, we had the World Bank project is with like 5 universities, and so they are kind of like the Ivies, let's say, of Palestine. Okay, so we go to an employer and say it's not everybody, it's the Ivies. So it's like an Ivy recruitment service. So that's kind of part of the value add for them. And if we just said it's everybody, no, I mean, maybe to answer your question, what we're doing to sort of address that issue is we're starting now a separate service for the 19 vocational colleges, which is like a totally separate sector. We're talking about lower skilled stuff and a different network of schools. So we're kind of opening it up a little bit more that way. And I'd love to do like low skill stuff too. I think that's another place we could grow. So there's good points. Yeah.
How much is your desire to grow into staying in disaster conflict zones?
That's a good question. No, I mean not at all. Like it's pretty much the conditions for replication have to be right. It's just got to be low web access but high mobile ownership. Network coverage has to be good, and literacy's got to be enough that people can read stuff, messages. Although we're looking at voice now, voice and text. I package it in terms of conflict zones because I don't know. There's a burning need there. It doesn't have to be necessarily.
I was just thinking about this earlier, but if it was purely a for-profit enterprise, it might be hard to reconcile with the conflict zones because it seems like it butt heads a little bit. But like, I was thinking on the for-profit side, a lot of these huge companies are trying to figure out how to survey bottom of the pyramid or try to access that customer marketing information. And if you go into like in India or China or even Brazil, I've heard of it happening in Latin America, but they have these door-to-door people that do surveys off cell phones or something handheld, and then generate data back into the PNGs of the world that could possibly be really lucrative.
Although then you enter these kind of like privacy issues as well. Would you have to disclose to the people like you could be having your information passed on to companies? I mean, it's a good idea, but the privacy issue kind of. Maybe take one more comment and then we can kind of wrap it up. If anyone's got one. Well, let me just say this then while you're pondering. There's a lot of other cool stuff that's out there that's in the mobile sector. Human rights reporting, mobile phone marketplace, medical stuff, disaster relief messaging that's linked to GPS. So it's a really kind of diverse space, and I recommend checking all these out. If you don't want to write the URLs, you can just email me and I'll send you a copy of the presentation. Last thing I would say is, if anybody wants to come over and work with us, we're based in Ramallah now, but we're Latin America is kind of our next envisioned growth point, hopefully starting next year. If you just want to stay connected, just shoot us an email or grab my card. We'd love to have people come over for the summer. If you want to take this and try to start it up on one of the scenarios we discussed in another market, yeah, great. We are looking for, and come on, because we're Harvard folks as well. It'd be great to just kind of keep that going too, and other people that are interested in mobile tech and social enterprise. So that's that. These are contact. Just email me or give me a buzz at that number. Skype. Thanks a lot, and I guess if you feel like you want to fill out the forms, great. Otherwise, to be frank as well, if you just want to email some thoughts, that's super good too. And that's it. Thanks for coming in.
I'm going to try something real quick so we get just a little bit of instant feedback. Our slot goes till about 4 today. We'll have some chance for an informal breakout. But okay, here we go. We're going to give it a try. Leave if you need to. Looking at these forms.
The hows and the whys of the conflict and how it got to where it is. This is not a poli-sci presentation. What I'm my starting point is, given that this stuff is happening, regardless of the motivations, regardless of who did what to whom, when, and why, and how. Looking ahead and looking forward, how can mobile technology play a role in solving it? If you want to hear more about sort of my opinions about, or my experience living in Ramallah, which is where I do in the West Bank, my opinions about the conflict, my thoughts, questions about the types of information I presented, please come after the presentation, and then we can talk in depth one-on-one. And I'd love to share sort of some of the views and the types of challenges we've been going through. Conflict zones are a tricky environment to get things done in. This is just a typical street scene. This is not in Israel-Palestine. This is actually in Lebanon. When infrastructure is damaged or non-existent, when electricity is not available, when internet access is low, when water and sanitation access is low, it's really difficult to get crucial information about different things to people. Whether you're in sub-Saharan Africa, if you're in the DRC, whether you're in Haiti, where there's flooding and power lines are washed out, wherever you are, if you see a situation like this, my first instinct is like, oh crap, okay, this is a mess. What do you do? This is Afghanistan, where an electrical base station has been damaged by fighting. That cuts off the ability for people to connect and do all sorts of things because of infrastructure damage. So in conflict zones, I mean, wherever you are, you've got lots of problems that are occurring. You've got people. The semantic term, I understand, is controversial in and of itself. I'm just taking a word and using it. We can call this conflict zone country because a lot of these things are applicable in other places too. It's about the size of Delaware. There's about 4 million people. It's kind of like the population of Boston. Gaza is the most densely populated place in the world, apparently. It has a lot of people per square kilometer. Poverty in a relative sense, but in absolute sense, the monthly income is actually pretty high. $400 a month for a developing country, as the West Bank and Gaza are always referred to, is quite high. Most people don't have wastewater treatment. That's just an indication of the fact that there is poverty, and it's pretty pervasive. The official unemployment rate, according to the Palestinian Authority, is about 40%. So that's high. Now, whether that's true, we'll get into. There's formal and informal employment that still happens. Education is a priority, historically speaking, and this was maintained when the Israeli civil administration was in control of the area as well. A strong priority on building an effective school system, give people education. 80% of high school eligible people are enrolled in high school. For a developing country, again, huge. Put a face to the name. This is Ramallah, Main Street. Yeah, I just mentioned in my other presentation, the bottom left-hand corner, very famous ice cream store. High levels of ice cream consumption occurring. On the right-hand side, actually, the green and white thing is that is the cell phone boutique. So that's a retailer for the National Cell Phone Company. These are for coming. I know it's Friday afternoon, so we'll try to keep it fairly brief and informal because there's not a large group. The form is optional. I just want to stress, don't feel compelled to fill it out. I'm not going to talk about some of the components that are on there. What I want to do is just give sort of an overview of who we are, what we do, and then, because the gearing of the presentation is towards social enterprise stuff, just bounce a couple ideas off you guys, because we are very much a work in progress, and we are a social enterprise. Yeah, and if you've got questions at any time, just feel free to interject and ask us about different things. What we do is we use cell phones in difficult areas, environments that are conflict or post-conflict, to empower the poor by giving them access to information about jobs and aid. The Middle East is an area where we started, and it's an area where we're working now, but we are expanding quickly, and we're launching in South America and in a couple of other places in Southern Africa as well, that are situations that are either countries in transition or areas where there's ongoing conflict where cell phones can play a role in mitigating some of the effects of those things. The examples that I'm going to be showing you today are drawn from the Middle East, specifically from Israel-Palestine region. This is a complex region. There's a complex conflict going on. Often people say there are two main sides to the conflict. There are many sides and many perspectives to the conflict. If you read the news, you'll know this. My job today is not to delve into sort of that are caught in the middle on whatever side of the conflict innocent civilians that need assistance with basic humanitarian aid, whether they're in Bosnia, whether they're in Sudan, wherever they are in the world. I think we all sort of know what conflict zones are and what they involve. Before I came to Kennedy School, was working for a USAID funded project, a US Agency for International Development project. This part of the US government's work in the Middle East, trying to move the peace process forward. I went over there with a US government contractor called the Education Development Center, which is based in Newton here, to do an assessment of what Palestinian youth in particular, what kinds of resources and tools Palestinian youth needed to create viable economic prospects in Palestinian society. We didn't look at Israeli society, we only looked at Palestinian society. That was the kind of scope of what the US government wanted to do there. These types of things, I mean, all of these things you'll find, in the Middle East region, as in any conflict zone. When I went over there, I saw all of these things: damaged physical infrastructure, roads not working, electrical power lines down, poor communication networks. So not different agencies, the UN, medical agencies, the governments, Israeli government, Palestinian government, both, trying to experiencing a lot of difficulties in communicating with each other. Fragmented planning after an event would happen. Who got what information? If there was medical care that was needed, whether it was a suicide bombing in Jerusalem or whether it was an attack in Nablus, difficulty in getting the right information quickly to allow a quick response to happen. I was there doing this assessment. I was working with my USAID friends, and the whole time I was there, I was just it just got in my head that if there was a good way to just use some basic technology. Israeli society is extremely high-tech. It's a world leader in terms of the high-tech sector, both hardware and software. Palestinian society, not so, for a variety of reasons. Access to internet in the West Bank and in Gaza is low. It's less than a third of the population, but almost everyone has a cell phone. So I kind of sat there and was like, well, there's got to be a way we can use cell phone technology to affect this region. This is the region that we're talking about, in case the Middle East is not your region. Below Turkey and above Egypt, it kind of gets a little bit small and busy in there. That's kind of, I think, the crux of what's going on. The West Bank is kind of like a green blob in which Jerusalem is situated for whatever reason on the map, I guess because it's kind of in a little pocket there in the middle. The Gaza Strip is not shown here. Those are the areas that we work in. We don't work in Israeli areas because, again, the nature of our technological solution is designed for low-tech environments. An overview on, again, people living in the West Bank and Gaza typically refer to the area as Palestine. That's the term I'm going to use today. There's lots of other names for it. West Bank and Gaza, Judea and Samaria, Israel, historical Palestine, Ottoman Empire, Byzantine Empire, you name it, okay?